Gareth A. Davies is with two of our talkSPORT colleagues who are in the audience this evening.
I am indeed. I'm in the VVVIP seat. Simon Jordan, sitting to my left, says that I never belong here, but he does. And he does belong here. I've got to ask you first, Simon, talk to me about Zhilei Zhang and Joe Joyce. What do you reckon about Joyce trying to get redemption tonight?
Well, I think it's a difficult fight, but everyone has now changed their opinion because of the first fight. In the same way that everyone changed their opinion about Liam Smith and Chris Eubank. Everyone talked about Eubank Jr. not being able to come back and avenge the defeat they had to Liam Smith. I know this is slightly different, but I'm still optimistic for Joe. But, you know, he's come in big. He came in very light last time round, and that didn't help him any. He's got a tough fight on his hands, but if Zhang isn't where he was last time, and Joe is 10% better, we'll see a different outcome, won't we? I mean, the bottom line is I've got a feeling this fight goes one way or the other in terms of it either gets out early or Joe does what people anticipate he might do in the first fight, is take the fella down the stretch, use the engine that he's got, and do the damage later on in the fight. But for me, it's a pick 'em fight now. I thought Joe would win earlier on in the year, and I was surprised at how slow he was. And we all know he's predictable. We all know that he will take shots, and he's now gone up a level against someone that can really whack and has suffered as a result of it. So we're going to see if this has any psychological damage to him. We know he's going to be physically bigger, and we're going to see if he's changed anything, if he's going to start to move his head. Otherwise, he might be in for a very, very difficult evening if the same things are there from the first fight.
I love it that you're such a big boxing fan. You're right, it could go two different ways. It could be an early war. They're both very heavy. We've been over it with Carl Froch, Spencer Oliver, and Andy Clark, and Adam Catchell and myself tonight. Let me ask you, on the other side of the pond in a few hours, so I know you've got opinions about this. Yeah. Eddie Hearn's putting Conor Benn in the ring. There's still due process to go through. What's your take on what's happening with them and the Boxing Board of Control at the moment?
Well, I think it's very poor. I think it's a very difficult situation. I understand the arguments being advanced that he hasn't fought for 17 months. There's nothing standing in his way to stop him from fighting besides the moral argument. And that argument is an important one because I think the whole future of boxing is staring down the barrel of jeopardy when situations like this allow someone to overcome the reality of the British Boxing Board of Control by something as flaky as jurisdiction. I made an observation 2 or 3 weeks ago in regards to the Liam Smith and Chris Eubank Jr. testing regime, and I said, who wants VADA testing anyway, because they can find a jurisdictional way of getting around it. It was a flippant comment. It doesn't mean I don't want testing. I find it sad. I think the whole representation of Conor from the get-go has been poor. There's only one or two reasons, shall I say, that this fight is going on, that Eddie Hearn's so invested in. One is because it represents a financial transaction, and two is because it delivers content to DAZN, which they're having problems with. I think it's wrong. I think that they should face due process. I think he should go through the strict liability. We sat in front of a guy that was a very smooth operator 3 or 4 months ago, this guy Rennie, who talked about...
René Carreol.
Right.
And the doctor who said correct. The metabolites are food, not pills, so get it out there.
Absolutely right. Yeah. Now, if that is compelling evidence, and that gets him out from underneath, then happy days, everyone will say that's an outcome that we can all live with. This is an outcome that no one should want to live with, besides those that are seeking to profit from this young man. And no matter what happens with Conor now, if he doesn't do this, there will be a significant proportion of the boxing fraternity and the boxing public that will never take to Conor Benn again, because they'll look at it from that perspective, and that he may well be prepared to face that. He may face it with fury and anger and rage against those that he thinks have maligned him. But the only people that have maligned him is the people that have not guided him properly. Those are the wolves in sheep clothing, not the ones in the boxing world that have said, come on, Conor, you've got to clear your name.
There's been a lot of very bad choices over the last year, or 17 months really, when they found out about the first test. And the thing is, like you say, there will always be a dark cloud hanging over him if they don't do the due process and the strict liability. And if they have the evidence, it just does not make any sense that they can't come forward, do transparency. If the board and UCAD look on him kindly, they can retrospectively say, right, you've been out for this length, or they could have done in about 4 hours time, 5 hours time, been fighting anyway. He's going to have to clear his name at some point. Otherwise, he's a guy that's going to have to be licensed in other countries, and he's always going to be an outsider.
Well, there's going to be an interesting landscape for others, you see. It's not just Conor Benn. There's collateral damage to anybody else that's got a British Boxing Board of Control licence that might want to fight Conor Benn. that might want to spar Conor Benn, that might want to train fighters that fight Conor Benn, because they're up for the British Boxing Board of Control licensing issues. Because if Conor Benn doesn't clear himself with the British Boxing Board of Control, it's going to be interesting to see if they want to die on a hill which says, okay, we couldn't get you through due process, but you're not in good standing with us, which means that anyone that fights you puts their own British Boxing Board of Control licence. That will be an interesting hill to see if Robert Smith and the British Boxing Board of Control are prepared to die on. The challenge for me is, and people talk about agendas and they talk about motivations and my relationship with Frank Warren and my rapport with Ben Shalom. Everyone has different dynamics, everyone has different relationships. Some people warm to others more than they do to the next guy. But when Eddie Hearn stands in front of me, or sits in front of us 6 months ago and tells me that he doesn't have a contract with Conor Benn, so he couldn't have taken that fight off. He had to wait for the British Boxing Board of Control.
You won't let that one go, will you?
I'll tell you why I won't let it go. Because when he goes on Drive 2 days ago and says to Andy Goldstein, I've had a contract with Conor Benn for a year, boom, there's another untruth. When I asked him about drug-free sport and said to him, have you used them recently? No, I haven't used them for 6 months. And we find out he used them 2 weeks previously against Alicia Baumgarten. These are questions, or for Alicia Baumgarten, these are questions that need to be asked and answered as to one of the best promoters in the world seems to operate in a very different way than he would have you believe. No doubt he's a class act. No doubt he's a showman. No doubt he puts on some of the best fights in the world. But over this Conor Benn situation, this is bad news, and people can turn it into whatever they want to about my particular relationship with Eddie. It's got nothing to do with that. It's about this one instance. I've always maintained that Eddie Hearn was one of the best promoters. He paid his fighters promptly. He never mucked anybody about. But on this one, with Conor Benn, this is a stain on boxing.
Welcome to the Simon Jordan Show tonight. Listen, stay wealthy, stay wise, but most of all, stay healthy. It's great to see you here tonight. We'll catch up with you later. Thanks for your time.
My pleasure.